For months, the silence from John Force had everyone speculating. Rumors swirled about what really happened behind the scenes with Austin Prock, but no one knew the full truth. Now, in a stark departure from his usual high-octane persona, John Force recently broke his months-long silence regarding Austin Prock's exit from John Force Racing, JFR. Gone were the bright sponsor banners and the frantic energy of the racetrack. Instead, the legendary driver sat in a dimly lit office, appearing worn and visibly shaken. With red-rimmed eyes and a heavy heart, he admitted that the delay in speaking wasn't due to a lack of concern, but rather an inability to process the profound emotional weight of the situation. He confessed that the internal culture of the team had suffered a significant breakdown, and he took personal responsibility for the rift. John revealed that Austin didn't leave simply for a new opportunity, but because the environment at JFR had become untenable. The legend's voice wavered as he described the shame he felt, acknowledging that his own actions contributed to the departure of a driver he viewed as both a protege and a family member. John explained that the split wasn't the result of a single explosive argument, but rather a slow, toxic decay of communication. When Austin first joined, he was hailed as the future of the sport, a young, fearless talent who reminded John of his younger self. However, as the stakes grew, the pressure within the organization became suffocating. John admits he pushed the young driver toward a legacy of dominance without giving him the necessary space to develop his own identity or catch his breath. Beneath the surface of their public success, technical disagreements were brewing. Austin often felt sidelined during tuning sessions, while John was stretched thin by the demands of sponsors, his own health, and managing Britney's career. The constant public comparisons, asking if Austin was the next John Force, created an impossible standard. John lamented that he failed to notice the immense stress Austin was carrying until the damage was already done and the first cracks had turned into a canyon. For months, fans and media outlets wondered why the normally talkative Force had nothing to say about the roster change. John now explains that he drafted dozens of statements, ranging from defensive to apologetic, only to tear them all up. He was paralyzed by the dual roles he played: the business owner who needed to manage a PR crisis, and the father figure who didn't want to jeopardize Austin's future. He feared that any public comment would be twisted by the media, further hurting the people he cared about. The deepest reason for his silence, however, was a refusal to face his own sense of failure. John admitted that admitting the truth meant acknowledging he couldn't keep his professional family together. This period was equally difficult for his daughter, Britney, who was navigating her own challenges on the track while losing her closest teammate. John realized that his silence, intended as a protective shield, had actually become a lingering wound for everyone involved. The final fracture occurred not on the asphalt, but behind the closed doors of a team strategy meeting. A heated debate broke out regarding the car's setup, with Austin insisting the vehicle was inconsistent and unresponsive. Instead of listening to his driver's intuition, the crew chiefs and John pushed back, demanding that Austin adjust his driving style instead. John admits he was focused on deadlines and sponsor expectations rather than the human being sitting across from him who was pleading for support. And the tension peaked when Austin quietly admitted he no longer felt he belonged in the organization. The statement hit John like a physical blow, yet he responded with defensiveness rather than empathy, reminding Austin that the team was larger than any one individual. Austin left that room in tears, and John remained behind, staring at the door. He now looks back at that specific moment as his greatest mistake, realizing that was the exact second he should have chased after the young driver to make things right. A few days after the disastrous meeting, Austin requested a private conversation with John before the rest of the crew arrived at the shop. John initially expected a discussion about upcoming race logistics, but he was met with a blunt request for a release from his contract. Austin wasn't looking for a fight or a raise. He was simply exhausted. He told John that while he loved the sport, staying at JFR would eventually lead to a resentment that he didn't want to harbor. During those 10 minutes, John attempted to negotiate, urging Austin to stay at least until the end of the season. He promised that things would change and that the team would fix its internal issues, but Austin remained firm. He told John that leaving wasn't what he wanted to do, but it was what he needed to do for his own well-being. When Austin finally walked out to his car, John didn't stop him, finally understanding that true leadership means knowing when you've pushed someone past their breaking point. The departure had a devastating ripple effect on Britney Force, who viewed Austin as her primary emotional support system within the high-pressure world of drag racing. They had acted as pillars for one another, sharing the unique burden of the Force legacy. When Austin left, Britney didn't react with anger. Instead, she retreated into a heartbreaking silence. John watched with guilt as his daughter struggled to absorb the loss of her closest ally in the pits. Britney began to question if the environment at JFR was collapsing and if she would be left to carry the entire weight of the organization on her own. She never blamed Austin for leaving, but she quietly struggled with the culture that had driven him away. John admitted that watching his daughter's confidence waver was one of the most painful aspects of the ordeal. For the first time in his legendary career, the man who could fix almost any mechanical problem felt completely powerless to repair the emotional damage within his own home. In the weeks following the split, the reality of the loss began to settle into the corners of the JFR shop. John found himself replaying past conversations, pinpointing the moments where Austin had reached out for help only to be brushed off. He realized that he had treated Austin with the same relentless toughness he applied to himself, forgetting that not everyone thrives under constant, unyielding friction. He had mistaken his own obsession for universal leadership, and the cost was the loss of a brilliant talent. John choked back tears as he admitted that he had confused guidance with control. He wanted Austin to be great, but he failed to see that he was actually driving him toward a mental collapse. The sight of Austin's empty workstation became a daily reminder of his failure to mentor the young driver with the empathy he deserved. Most painfully, John confessed that his pride had kept him from telling Austin how much he feared losing him until it was far too late to change the outcome. The exit of Austin Prock was more than a simple roster change. It was a fundamental shift that rocked the very foundation of JFR. Austin had been the spark that energized the crew, and his absence left a palpable void in the team's momentum. Meetings became strained, and rumors began to circulate among the staff about the long-term stability of the organization. Sponsors and media outlets began asking difficult questions that John simply wasn't prepared to answer. To stabilize the ship, JFR had to undergo a massive internal restructuring. Roles were redefined and strategic plans were rewritten, but the emotional vacuum remained. John worried that the departure signaled the beginning of the end for the Force legacy he had spent 50 years building. However, instead of folding, the remaining team members began to lean on one another in unexpected ways. They started to realize that if JFR was going to survive, it had to evolve into something more transparent and supportive than it had been in the past. Turning his attention directly to the camera, John Force delivered a raw, unfiltered message to his former driver. He told Austin that he didn't fail the team, but rather, the team had failed him. He praised Austin's work ethic and the joy he brought to the pits, acknowledging that his presence had often been the only thing keeping the team's spirits high during difficult stretches. John apologized for not providing the support necessary for Austin to flourish on his own terms. He went further, apologizing for the constant comparisons and for trying to mold Austin into a version of himself. He told Austin that he deserved the freedom to be his own man and his own driver, regardless of where he raced. John concluded this emotional plea by telling Austin that while he understood the need for closure, the door at JFR would always be open. It was a rare moment of total vulnerability from a man who had spent his life projecting an image of iron-willed invincibility. Moving forward, John vowed to rebuild JFR with a focus on empathy, better listening, and genuine communication. He promised to be a better father to his daughters and a better mentor to his crew, accepting that pain is sometimes the only catalyst for necessary growth. He ended with the somber realization that a legacy is ultimately defined by the people you leave behind, not the records you set. As the cameras faded, the legendary John Force remained at his desk, a man seeking redemption in the twilight of his career.